Which is better, truck campers or Class C RVs? We've had experience with both types of RVs, and today I'm going to share my thoughts with you. For the purpose of today's video, I want to define how I'm going to be referring to a truck camper and a Class C RV. The easiest way to think of a truck camper is you have a truck, you have a camper, and you put the camper on the truck. Somehow there are slide-in flatbeds and other versions of that. For Class C RV, it's one whole unit. So what the RV manufacturer does is they take typically a cutaway chassis, that's the cab with the bare frame, and then they build the camper portion on top of that frame. So it's all one thing. Kate and I have had experience in both. We actually lived out of a flatbed truck camper for 2 years, and we've toured a number of other truck campers over the years. We've also had time in Class C RVs and toured a number of Class C RVs as well. Now, I would love to know your experiences down in the comments below, and as you're watching this video, let me know what you think about the differences between a truck camper and a Class C RV. Chassis. Now, there is a wide range of vehicles that you can put a truck camper on. Typically, they go in the back of a pickup truck. Now, these pickup trucks can range from anywhere from small mid-sized trucks all the way up to the big 4500 series dualies that they use. You can also put them on pretty much anything else you can mount a camper to. I've seen these on semi-truck chassis, I've seen them on expedition vehicles, I've even seen people mount a truck camper on the back of a trailer that they tow behind a truck. So there's a whole number of variations there for the chassis of a truck camper. With Class C RVs, as I mentioned earlier, manufacturers are taking a cutaway cab chassis. That means you get the cab, a bare frame, and then they build the camper on the back. The cab and the camper aren't really meant to be separated. So when you go looking for a Class C RV, your chassis is going to be limited by what the manufacturer has chosen to build on. So that's really a limitation there, where truck campers, you can pretty much pick any truck that will work for the size camper you want. Vehicle size. On the truck camper side, a truck camper can be as small or as big as you want it. You could build a small truck camper on a Toyota Tacoma, or you can also go all the way up to a full-size 4-door dually and put some monster camper on the back of that. With a Class C RV, those tend to be overall bigger. There are some smaller ones, but generally what I've seen is a Class C RV will be around 24 feet on the small side and can go anywhere up to 45 feet in length with some of the Super Cs that are out there. The thing with Class Cs is that they are not limited by the truck bed on the back. So even full-size trucks have an 8-foot bed, and that limits how big of a camper they can put on the back. Now, some of these big campers out there will hang off the back of the truck by about 4 or 5 feet, but that still limits you on the size you can put back there. In terms of size, if you're looking for something small, a truck camper might be the better option. If you're looking for bigger, more room, Class C might be the way to go. Drivability. This all depends on the chassis and how it's set up. If you have a truck chassis that's overloaded with the camper, it may not drive as well as a Class C. The Class C may not drive as well as a truck that has a lighter camper on it and suspension upgrades and a bunch of other modifications that have been made to make it drive better. Again, this comes down to what you're looking for. I will say on the truck side, there are more options and aftermarket accessories than you'll find on the Class C side. This leads me into towing. Both platforms can tow. The truck side will generally have a better tow capacity, but again, it depends on how heavy your camper is. If you've completely loaded up your truck and you're at or above your GVWR, you may not have the capacity for the tongue weight or to be able to pull an additional trailer behind you. The same holds true for a Class C RV. Now let's get into drivability off-road. This is where I think the truck camper really shines, because you can take a truck straight off the factory with 4-wheel drive, and it's going to be better than most Class Cs out there on the market. The reason for this is most Class Cs do not come with 4-wheel drive. They are starting to make more these days with 4-wheel drive, but even then, they tend to be much larger and heavier vehicles than a truck camper. With the trucks, going back to the accessories, there are a lot more aftermarket accessories for suspension, tires, wheels, and those things that you can upgrade on the truck than you can on a Class C. Now, I will say there are companies like Quigley who will build out four-wheel conversions for Class C RVs, making them more off-road capable. But again, you're going to have this high center of gravity, a much heavier and larger vehicle to take off-road than you do potentially a truck camper. Drivability isn't just about going down the road. It's what happens when you get there and you need to park your vehicle. Let's say you go to grocery shopping for that camping trip. Most truck campers are going to be able to fit in a normal parking spot because they're just a standard pickup truck. Whereas a Class C, which tends to be bigger, might have to park at the back of the lot and take up multiple spots. This can be problematic depending on where you go and how big your Class C is. The truck camper wins in some sections because of its smaller size, but overall it really depends on how big of a camper and how big of a truck you use and how big of a Class C you have. MPG. This is kind of all up in the air. It really depends on the chassis you have, the engine, how you drive, what accessories are added. Do you have a lift kit, bigger tires? There are a number of factors that are going to impact MPG, but I will say in general, I've seen MPG numbers as low as 8 and as high as the mid-teens for some of these vehicles. Livability. I would say this section definitely goes to the Class C RVs. Since they do tend to be bigger, there is going to be more room inside. They're going to have a nice open pass-through between the driver's compartment and the camper inside. There's going to be more room for storage because since the RV itself is bigger, there are going to be more cabinets and closets inside, as well as storage bays on the outside, which is a feature that most truck campers do not have unless someone has added something aftermarket to their truck. With a truck camper, despite the fact that there's less storage in the camper, if you have a 4-door truck like we do, we took out the back seat and that turned into a closet kind of garage for us, and we were able to store a lot of stuff in there. But even with that, we still couldn't store as much as we could in a larger Class C RV. Now, the other thing with a Class C is since you do have that opening into the cab, some are big enough and on the same level as the driver's compartment where you can flip the chairs around and make that part of your living room. So you've now extended your living area. This is something you can't do with truck campers. In general, truck campers also don't have a pass-through because they are two separate pieces. And in order to have a good pass-through between the camper and the cab, you need some sort of way to keep water and things out in order to go from one to the other. Class C RVs also have more layout options because there is more room to work with. With some of the larger models, you can have multiple bedrooms, multiple bathrooms, living rooms, and slides that extend that living area even more. Now, truck campers aren't quite out of the fight on this one. There are larger versions that do have slides, but again, you're working with a limited footprint of what you can fit in a truck bed. With that truck bed, it does have some limitations because those bed sides come up, and unless you're in a flatbed, you have to contour the truck camper to fit inside of that, which is going to limit the amount of room you have inside of that camper. Most Class Cs are going to have a dry bath, meaning you have a separate shower and toilet. Whereas on a truck camper, since space is limited, more often than not, you're going to find wet baths, meaning the toilet is part of the shower. Now, to some people that doesn't matter, but to others, it's a necessity to have the two separated. You're also going to have much larger tanks on a Class C RV. So water tank, gray tank, black tank. Truck campers are going to have much smaller tanks because, again, everything has to fit into that shell of the camper. It's completely separate from the truck itself. Now, there are some aftermarket options, like on our flatbed where we had an auxiliary water tank, but that's kind of few and far between. For the most part, the tanks have to fit within that footprint of the truck camper without getting in the way of other things. So what you'll find is more often than not, cassette toilets or small black tanks. You're going to have a small freshwater tank and a small gray tank if you have a gray tank at all. In our truck camper, we didn't have one and we had to make one ourselves. If you're planning to go off-grid, those larger tank sizes of the Class C RV are going to work in your favor because you can stay out longer. With a truck camper, you're going to have to manage your resources a little bit better. In terms of battery size, solar, you can put more on a Class C, But lately, more and more, we've seen truck campers coming with very robust electrical systems that are able to run AC systems and other components in the camper. Another question that comes up is, how many people are you going to bring along? If it's just yourself or another person, Class Cs and truck campers are pretty much equal here. But if you're going to bring a family along, a truck camper might be a better idea because you can get a truck with 4 doors and multiple seats. In some trucks today, you can still seat up to 6 people, 3 in the front, 3 in the back. Everybody has seat belts, you have airbags, and those types of things. Most Class Cs tend to only have 2 doors, which means if you're bringing people along, they're going to be sitting back in the camper. Now, there are some campers that just have lap belts, but that's not as secure as having an actual shoulder strap tied into a seat. There are exceptions to this. The Hilt that I mentioned earlier had 4 doors and you could seat 5 people inside, all with seat belts. Full-time living. This really is going to depend on how you plan to live on the road full-time. If you want to be small and nimble and you're only bringing yourself and maybe one other person, a truck camper might be the best solution. It really depends on what you need and how you're planning to travel. Think about whether or not you want to go someplace and stay there for a couple weeks or even a couple months at a time. Or do you want to be moving from place to place every few days? The truck camper is more nimble, it's smaller, it's easier to fit in places, but the Class C is going to have all that living space and it's going to be much more comfortable over the longer term. So it really depends on what you're looking for and what you plan to do with it. When we had our truck camper, we lived out of that full time for 2 years. We could just as easily see ourselves living out of a Class C RV. But it's all about compromise. We wanted something smaller that was able to go off-roading and do a lot of overlanding, which is something we couldn't do in most Class Cs on the market. Serviceability. It's going to be much easier to service a truck camper than it is a Class C RV. With a truck camper, you just take it into whatever dealer or mechanic you have that works on that particular chassis, be it Ford, Ram, Nissan, Toyota, whatever. With the Class C RV, you're going to be limited by which mechanics or which shops are able to take a vehicle of that size. If you take your truck camper into place and they don't have a tall enough door to fit your truck camper in, you can always take your truck camper off, leave it in a parking lot, leave it at a campground, and that type of thing. You can't do that with a Class C. For example, our local Ford dealer won't take RVs because they don't have the bays big enough to handle them. This is something to think about if you're going to be living full time out of this, is if you need to get service work done on your vehicle, you may want to leave your truck camper at the campground and you can live out of it while the truck's getting serviced. Whereas a Class C, you're going to have to leave that there and get a hotel room or something else. Insurance and registration. With a Class C RV, that is going to be insured and registered as a recreational vehicle, and you will pay recreational vehicle insurance rates, which tend to be lower than others. With a truck camper, you're going to pay registration and insurance on the truck. And some states require that you register the camper, but most do not. You also don't need to insure the camper, but when we had ours, we did for peace of mind, and it was a very small price to do so. Flexibility. This is where the truck camper is a clear winner, because when you get home from a camping trip, you can take your camper off and now you have your truck to use as a truck. Also, if you get tired of your camper and you want to upgrade or change to something else, you can get a new camper. If you need a new truck, you can get a new truck and keep your old camper. You can also get a used camper with a new truck or a used truck with a new camper. There are so many ways to build out a truck camper and so many ways to change it later that it is much more flexible than a Class C RV, because when you buy a Class C RV, you get what you get. If it's used, it's all used. If it's new, it's all new. And if you want to change it out, you have to get a different one. And outside of camping out of a Class C or maybe using it as an office or some other things like that, there's really no utility to it outside of it being an RV. Whereas your truck camper, again, you have a truck. You can tow things with it, you can put things in the bed, and then when you're ready to go camping, you can put the camper right back on it. Now that said, when we had ours, since we were living out of it full time, we never took the camper off the back until we got ready to sell the camper. And we still own the truck. We use it as a farm truck, and one day we might put another camper back on it. Also, in terms of flexibility, when you get home from that camping trip, you can drop your camper and put it into a garage or a shed and then park your truck into the garage. But with a Class C RV, unless you have a barn or a specific building built to house it, you're probably not going to be able to store it inside, and you're going to need more room to park it on your property or take it to a storage place to keep it there. You could also potentially get around some HOA restrictions with a truck camper, because you could take the camper off, put it on a dolly or something, and wheel it into your garage so it's out of view. With a Class C RV, you can't do that, and many HOAs won't allow you to park an RV on your property. Another area where truck campers are more flexible is when you go camping. Now, if you have a smaller truck and camper, a lot of times you can get into a tent spot or a much smaller spot at a campground, whereas a Class C, since they tend to be bigger, you have to get larger spots. You're also restricted if you go to places like national parks and they have a size limitation for their camping area. So you're able to camp and go a lot more places in a truck camper than you can in most Class Cs in general. Another area this comes into play is if you need to do a quick overnight and stop at, let's say, a rest area or truck stop. With a truck camper, you can probably just fit into a standard parking spot so you can stay on the car side. With a larger Class C, you're going to have to go park with the semi-trucks, assuming you can find a spot, and it's going to be a lot noisier over there. So in terms of flexibility, the lesson learned here is the smaller the camper, the more flexible you are. Regardless of whether it's a truck camper or Class C, the smaller you can go, the more flexible you're going to be. Price. Truck campers and Class C RVs can run the gamut in terms of prices. We were recently at an RV show and I saw a Class C RV for $60,000. Now the Storyteller Overland Hilt that we took out was just under $500,000. That range is huge. But with truck campers, sometimes you can't even get a new truck for under $60,000, depending on what you're looking for. And I've seen people spend well over $150,000 on their truck, depending on the accessories and other things that they add to it. And that doesn't even count the camper that they put on the back. And campers themselves can range in prices from the lightweight truck campers all the way up to the big luxury models that can cost over $100,000. So there is no clear winner in terms of price, and it really comes down to your budget. One thing I like about the truck campers is a good way to save some money is to buy a good used truck and then put a new camper on the back of it. Let's go back to the question I posed at the beginning of the video. Which is better? As you've heard me say throughout the video, it's really going to depend on you and how you plan to travel. Are you bringing people with you? How much stuff do you need to have? All of those factors go into picking which one of these two, truck camper or Class C RV, is the right one for you. I would say if you're going to be moving a lot more, you want to be smaller and more nimble. A truck camper lends itself better to this. If you want to go places and spend more time, or you're bringing people and you need more room and separation, separate bathroom, things like that, Class C might be the better way to go. If you really want to go off-road and get off the beaten path, truck campers are really the answer to that one, because they can be smaller, lower center of gravity, and much more able to get around things like trees and over obstacles than a Class C RV ever would be. So at the end of the day, it really depends on you and how you want to travel in it. I'd love to know down in the comments below if you had either, how you've used them, and what you think is best. So that is it for this video. If you'd like to see some of the other comparison videos we've done, head over to our YouTube channel. We're the Russos. If you're interested in some one-on-one consulting with me, I can help you go through the different options of RVs, things to consider and to look for, and to help you avoid some common pitfalls. If you're interested in that, check out the description below and you'll find a link to contact me directly. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you next time. Bye.